Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into something pretty interesting today and personal too, like really personal. We're going to try to learn about the life of one of your ancestors, your third great grandmother. Her name was Anne Richman, and she lived in England back in the 1800s.
Yeah, the 19th century.
Exactly, the 19th century. And, the cool thing is you've got this, really detailed family tree stuff, this blog post that someone in your family put together that's got all these amazing sources,
Mm.
census records, parish
Oh,
registers.
it's fantastic.
It's really cool, and it gives us a lot to work with.
Yeah, it does. It's like, we've got all these little pieces
Yeah.
we can use to put together a picture of Anne's life.
So that's exactly what we're going to do in this deep dive. We want to go way beyond just names and dates. We want to dig into the details, find out who she was as a person, like what her life was actually like.
Yeah, but what was it like to be Anne living in England back then?
Exactly. All right, so let's jump in. First things first, we got to figure out when and where she was born.
Okay, so for that, we can look at those census records you mentioned. They give us a couple of clues about her birth year.
Oh, that's perfect.
In the 1841 census, it looks like she was around 59.
Okay.
But then 10 years later in the 1851 census, she's listed as being about 67.
Oh, interesting. So there's a little bit of discrepancy there.
Yeah, a slight difference. It's actually pretty common to find these little variations in historical records. You gotta remember, this was before, computers and everything was so precise. It reminds us that these records aren't always perfect snapshots. Sometimes they're more like approximations.
Yeah, for sure. Makes you realize how much detective work goes into piecing together the past.
For sure. But even with that little difference, both censuses seem to point to Anne being born in Devizes, which is in Wiltshire, England.
Okay. Devices. Got it.
And if we take those ages and kind of work backward, it seems likely she was born sometime between 1781 and 1784.
All right, so we've got her birth year narrowed down, a possible birthplace. Now, what about her parents?
So this is where things get a little tricky.
I figured.
Apparently, there were a couple of other Anne Marshmans, her maiden name, who were baptized in Devizes around the same time.
Oh, wow. So how do we figure out if one of them is our Anne?
Well, it's a bit of a genealogical puzzle for sure,
Yeah.
but your blog post explores a really strong possibility, and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It suggests that her parents might have been John Marshman and Anne Marshman. Her middle name was Angel, so Anne Angel Marshman.
Okay.
And they lived in a place called Hilperton, which wasn't too far from Devizes.
Gotcha. All right, so what makes them the most likely candidates?
So we don't have an exact baptismal record for our Anne in Devizes that actually names John and Anne as her parents.
Okay.
But there's some really intriguing connections.
Like what?
Okay, so John and Anne, this couple in Hilperton, they had several other children baptized in Hilperton between 1767 and 1783,
All right.
which means, there was definitely a Marshman family living right there in that area.
Right, so it's the right place, right time period.
Exactly. And here's the really interesting part. When Anne got married to John Richman in 1811, guess where it happened?
Hilperton.
Hilperton.
Interesting.
And guess who one of the witnesses was?
Oh, I bet I was a Marshman.
You got it. A Thomas Marshman. And the blog suggests this Thomas was probably their eldest son. He was baptized way back in 1767.
Wow. That really connects things, doesn't it?
It really does. So while we don't have a definitive baptismal record for Anne that says this is her mom and dad, it makes a lot of sense to think that she was part of this Marshman family from Hilperton.
It seems very likely, yeah. So, okay, we know a bit about her early life, possible parents. Let's move on to her marriage. She married John Richman, as we said, on February 8th, 1811, in Hilperton. What else do we know about that event?
So the marriage record itself, which, by the way, comes from the Hilperton Parish Register Bishop's transcripts, so that's like a copy of the original sent to the bishop, just to make sure everything was recorded properly. It mentions that John, her husband, signed with an X.
Oh, interesting. What does that tell us?
It's a strong indication that he was probably illiterate. He couldn't write his name.
Right.
And, that one little detail gives us a glimpse into his social standing, the kind of life he might have had.
Yeah.
In early 19th century England, if you couldn't read or write, it probably meant your options were limited.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so they're married. What about their life together? Did they have kids? What was their family like?
So they had a big family, actually.
Oh, wow.
8 kids. And we know this because their baptisms were all recorded in those Hilperton parish records.
Oh, cool.
We have their names and at least an idea of when they were born, most of them anyway. Elizabeth in 1811, then Sarah in 1814, followed by a son, John, in 1816, another Anne in 1818. Then James in 1821, he's important because he's actually your direct ancestor.
Wow.
And then Thomas in 1823. And sadly, they also had two daughters named Mary, both of whom died as infants, one in 1823 and the other in 1825.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is. And, it really brings home the reality of life back then, how common infant mortality was.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that part of history sometimes.
Yeah, but it's important to remember. And the fact that all these baptisms, these births and deaths, were recorded in those parish registers, it gives us such a tangible connection to their lives. You can imagine them there in that church, experiencing those moments of joy and sorrow. It's really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're starting to get a sense of their family life. What about their work? How did they make a living?
Well, for that, we can turn back to those census records. Remember, they're like little snapshots in time.
Right.
So the 1841 census, we find the family living on Marsh Lane in Hilperton Marsh. John, he's 52 at this point, and he's working as a coal hauler.
Okay. Tough job.
Oh, yeah, very physically demanding. And she's 59, and she's a weaver. Their daughter, Elizabeth, she's 30, and she's also a weaver.
So they're both working in textiles. That makes sense.
Yeah, weaving was a common occupation for women in that area. And then their son, James, he's 20, and he's working as an agricultural laborer.
Yeah.
So in 1841, you can see this whole family actively contributing to their local economy.
Yeah, definitely. So what about 10 years later, the 1851 census? Did anything change?
Yeah, there are some interesting changes. In 1851, they're still in Hilperton Marsh, but John's occupation is different now. He's listed as a butcher.
Oh, wow. So he changed careers later in life.
Right. That makes you wonder what led to that shift. Was it something about the local economy, maybe a personal choice, because of health reasons, or a new opportunity?
Yeah, that's a great point. It really makes you think about the story behind that single entry in the census. What about Anne? What's she listed as in the 1851 census?
She's 67, but there's no occupation listed for her.
So maybe she was retired or focused on running the household at that point?
Could be.
Anything else interesting in that census record?
Yeah. There were two granddaughters living with them, Mary, who's 8, and Rosa, who's 3.
Oh, wow.
And, that suggests that some of their kids had probably started their own families by then. And maybe Anne and John were helping out, taking care of the grandkids. It shows how families change and adapt over time, and the important role grandparents often played.
Absolutely. It adds another layer to their story. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Her possible parents, her marriage, her children, her work, her husband's career change, her grandkids. What about the end of her life? What do we know about her later years?
So according to the Hilperton Parish Registers, Anne was buried on July 31st, 1856.
Okay.
Which means she must have died sometime before that. And if we go by her estimated birth year, she would have been around 72 years old.
All right, so we have the beginning and the end of her life, both connected to these places, Devizes and Hilperton.
Exactly.
It's amazing how these records can help us trace someone's journey through time. And what makes all of this even more powerful is knowing that this is your family history. Anne is your third great-grandmother. That's incredible.
It really is. It means that you're directly descended from this woman who lived such a different life so many years ago.
Can we just take a minute to trace that lineage, that connection from Anne to you?
Of course. So Anne and John Richman, they were the parents of James Richman, who was born in 1821. He married Hannah Rich, and they had a son named Thomas Richman, born in 1848. Thomas married Julia E. White, and they had a daughter, Alma Bessie Richman, born in 1882. Alma married Frederick Walton Seaver, and their son, Frederick Walton Seaver, Jr., was born in 1911. He married Betty Virginia Carringer, and they had a son, your parent, Randall J. Seaver, who was born in 1943. So there you have it. Anne Marshman Richman, your third great-grandmother.
It's amazing to think about all those generations, all those lives connecting you to her. It really shows the power of genealogy to bridge the gap between the past and the present.
Absolutely. We started with just a few names and dates, but by digging into these records, we were able to piece together a whole narrative. We saw Anne within her family, her community, her work, the challenges and joys of her time. It wasn't a life of huge historical events, but it was a life nonetheless, filled with meaning and connections.
And that's what makes it so special. So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's recap what we learned about Anne. She was likely born in Devizes around 1784, married John Richman in Hilperton, raised a large family, worked as a weaver, saw her husband transition from coal hauler to butcher, and ultimately passed away in Hilperton sometime before July 1856. It's remarkable what we can learn from these historical records. They give us glimpses into the lives of ordinary people, people like Anne, who might not have made headlines, but whose lives were just as rich and meaningful as our own.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating is how these seemingly small details, the names, the dates, the occupations, they all help us move beyond just a name on a family tree and see a real person. It's a reminder that everyone has a story, and those stories are worth exploring.
So, as you think about Anne's life, consider the journeys of all your ancestors. Think about how their stories, captured in these fragments of history, have led to you. What other questions do you have about the Richman and Marshman families? About the world they lived in? What other mysteries are waiting to be uncovered? It's amazing what you can discover when you start digging into the past.